I get a diff with your brother Billy because I got a chick named Elvira who is the queen of Coolsville.
Well, why don't you tell us about her, will you?
Oh, love those Bruins.
The 80s were an exciting time for the Groundlings. Pee Wee Herman took the world by storm, and Elvira became a household name. Jon Paragon had a Showtime special and went to work with both Paul and Cassandra on camera and as a writer.
And then a very exciting thing happened, which was Jon Lovitz and Phil Hartman both got on Saturday Night Live, which was sort of like the holy grail for most of us.
Long-form plays and musicals were the new launching pad for careers. Olympic Trials, A Chick Hazard Mystery, Casual Sex, and On the Road with Guy DeSimone were just a few. The company opened the Groundlings East in New York City, which developed fine comic actors, but almost broke the company financially.
The Groundlings didn't even realize that it was going to have such an incredible future beyond the 80s. But still, the 80s were pretty great.
When I came into the Groundlings, there was a big turnover. I mean, the fact that it survived that sort of summer that I was there, because you had the founder of the Groundlings leaving, not under great circumstances, sort of a little bit of a coup because they needed to move in a certain direction.
It was thrilling. I mean, because all of a sudden we had our own lockers and it was gorgeous. And Archie Hahn was so instrumental in building the theater. I mean, he built the theater, and it was really, really, really thrilling.
I came to see the show, and the show was great. And then I auditioned. At the time, you could audition to get into the Groundlings. Now, you have to go through, I think, 8 years of school, or something like that, to be in the Groundlings now. But at the time, you know, all it took was, you know, passing the audition, and I think it was like $45 a month.
I definitely like working with Paul. Paul was just, you know, because Paul, I mean, the thing about Paul for me is like when you're talking to him, just like you and I are talking right now, Paul's like really quiet and just, you know, kind of down to earth and stuff. And then his mind starts going at it. And when he gets on stage, you could just see he's doing it.
So I go to see the Groundlings, and I really compare it to a religious experience for me. Like, I was just blown away. It was Phil as Chick Hazard. It was Paul as Pee Wee, Phyllis Katz, Edie McClurg, Cassandra Peterson, and I had just never seen anything like this. And I left the theater to go to the party, and I'm just sort of stupefied. I don't know what else to say. And then I get to the party and, you know, just hanging out at this party. I don't know anybody except the Coke dealer who's doing business. And who shows up at this party but Phil Hartman? It's like, oh my God, I just saw the Groundlings. That's unbelievable. And you feel, oh, you know, thank you. You know, and we start talking, as he would always talk to people. And we just sort of hit it off. I said, how do you do something like that? He said, well, here, I'll give you a phone number. And back when people carried little address books, he had Tom Maxwell's phone number. And he said, give him a call. I'll call him tomorrow if you want to. And I said, he said, I think they might be starting a new class. Well, again, the forces upstairs somehow stepped in, and it turned out that they were starting a new class, and somebody had just dropped out. And so there was an opening, or at least Tom was telling me this. There was an opening starting on Tuesday night. And I said, count me in. And I went to class, and that was my beginnings of the Groundlings. And even from that first night in class, I knew this was where I was supposed to be in life.
I was the original Mailman Mike. In fact, Paul, I think when I was up talking briefly to Paul and John, I think Paul said, yeah, we want you to be a mailman like, if you remember the old Dick and Jane readers from the 50s, you know, the friendly mailman, you know, he's real sort of American looking. And they bleached my hair like blonde. And, you know, I had a whole outfit up. I went down to, actually, in those days, you can't do it now, but in those days, there was a store anybody could go into and you could just buy a mailman outfit. I still have that whole outfit. It don't fit me anymore, but I still have that whole outfit from the original Pee Wee Herman stage show that we did at the Groundlings and then the Roxy, and then it was taped for HBO in '81.
It was a fluke. I was taking a class with Billy Steinhardt, and Tom was sitting all right, and Tom Beachwell came to teach it, and he invited several of us to come take his advanced class, because he had a small class, and that's what I did, and that's how I began.
The one that got me the notice the most was this character called Ramon Azteca, who had this, and that came from, the idea for Ramon Azteca came from an episode of The Gong Show that Paul Rubens and I did, and that was the only way that you could get into the union at the time. Chuck Barris was the only one who was actually paying union rates for people on his show. So if you did it a couple of times, you had to join the union. That's how I got in the union. And there was like a Sha-Na-Na band on while Paul and I were doing an act called Suave and Debonair, where we had page boy wigs on and top hats, and we danced on our toes, which was kind of a weird act. We didn't care. We just wanted to be on the show so we could get our after dues paid. And there was a guy who was doing this Sha-Na-Na band thing, and he had this big pompadour wig, and I thought, oh man, that's really cool. And so I went to a wig place on Hollywood Boulevard and drew this picture with a real exaggerated pompadour. It was like twice as big as the one that the guy had, this fake Sha-Na-Na band wore, and I put it on. And somebody said, oh, wow, you look like an Aztec god, you know? And I went like, yeah, Azteca, you know? And at the time, I was naming all of my characters Ray, after Ray Colcourt, just to torment him. Because I was doing this hippie character that was my brother, and I was calling him Ray. And so he became Ramon. And that was like a really popular character. I mean, that was the first like kind of commercial character that I never did here. The other ones were like this greasy-faced guy named Mr. Ferguson, who was a sex instructor, who, you know, showed you how to have sex using, you know, stick drawings on a piece of paper and slamming the two pieces of paper together for sex. And that character later became the breather on Elvira's show. And
my favorite memories were hanging out in the back and hanging out with amazing people, like Judy Toll and Robin Schiff, and watching people like Phil Hartman and Edie McClurg, and just seeing these brilliant personalities. So my favorite moments were backstage in the dressing room. And I remember there was like this, you know, whole jockeying of like where the women could sit in the dressing room, like there were territories, and there were all these kind of like weird jokes, like if you sat in Edie's chair, you could get killed. You would get, you know, you could get seriously hurt if you sat near, you know, or messed with her stuff.
I grew up as a comedy fan. I got involved in voice acting because there was still live comedy on the radio. There were radio dramas on and comedy records. My favorites were Stan Freberg and Jonathan Winters and a guy named Ken Nordine in Chicago with Word Jazz. You know, Willie, as a musician, you might have heard that on. And he took jazz arrangements, and it wasn't jazz and poetry. He would put little phrases and things in with the musicians and end up telling stuff. Well, I was just buzzed on all that, so that's why I pursued comedy and particularly voice work.
You got low prices, so we got them at Bad Stereo. We're in the white pages, the yellow pages, the green pages, everything but the Better Business Bureau Blue Book, and that's only because we didn't have the copy ready on time. You know that. Bad Stereo, we're ready to give you those low, easy monthly payments on your good credit, those high, difficult monthly payments on your bad credit. What, no credit? Come on down. Your cash is always good at Bad Stereo. We're in North Hollywood, Southgate, East Los Angeles, West Covina, La Habra, La Jolla, La Crescenta, La Cañada, Palo Alto, Petaluma, Pasadena, Paso Robles, Palos Verdes, and Pacific Palisades, Seal Beach, Huntington Park, Baldwin Hills, Shadow Hills, Lost Hills, home of the Killer Bees, and our brand new store.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's there's so many. I think my favorite person to have worked with was Tress MacNeille, because we wrote together and did so many scenes together, and she was my partner. So I would have to say Tress.
I was there probably until 1988, but I kept my locker at the theater because I needed the storage space. It was nice, and I had this collection of costumes that I still have to a great extent. I've had to, thin out the collection, but all of these great costumes for all of these pieces, and whatever would come up. Tim Stack had his the pair of red underwear. Did he tell you about the red underwear?
Nope.
Well, it was a famous piece of clothing.
I loved working with, Tim Stack and George McGrath and Jon Paragon and Paul Rubens and Edie McClurg. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on of favorite people. And of course, Phil Hartman was just amazing to work with. And I did a lot of shows with him. I did the Olympic Arts Festival with him, and the Pee Wee Herman show with him. And I did a show called Waco with Tom Maxwell and Randy Bennett. And that was a really, really fun show to do.
I learned so much from them. I just soaked up everything, went to every show, listened to everything that they said, and stole their material. And I think that that's probably the secret of success to every groundling. In fact, Cassandra Peterson had said that once in an interview. I remember reading it, and that she said, we just kind of steal from each other, and we were all fine with that. I'm still quoting.
So generous and so, when I was first in the groundlings, Judy told me we were poor, she sold chick bitches, and I don't know what I was doing, but neither of us had any money. And Phil Hartman took us out to Dharma Grab, and we were like, oh my God, it's so fancy. And then he took us to Palm Springs. I mean, he was just the nicest, most generous guy I ever met.
And Phil Hartman was clearly the most talented groundling, like maybe in all time.
It was using improvisation to create final work. And when we had good jokes, we kept them in. And the thing just got better and better to the point where we were put in the Olympic Arts Festival and getting to meet people from all over the world, coming in, the press from all over the world. It was really something for the groundlings to do that. Phil was very precise, because he's an artist, and he had attention to detail. And if the joke was good, whether he wrote it or somebody gave it to him, he would polish it until it was at its best. For example, I'll give you an example. He was working with Vicki Carroll, and there's a scene where a chick comes in and he gives her a hug, and it fell flat. There wasn't much to do. So after a while, Vicki said, when he says, "Whoa, wow, chick, you must be packing a .44 Magnum." And he acted like he was embarrassed, and he pulled back, and then the scene went on. And I said, this is a corny joke, and I think it's been used many times, but why don't you say, oh, gee, it was a 38 when I came in. And he said, well, let me see. So the next night, he hugs her. She says, wow, chick, you must be carrying a 44 Magnum. And he went, oh, it was only a 22 when I came in. And he knew to make the gap of the sizes bigger, and he'd get a bigger laugh. Then he wasn't afraid of mugging and going big and doing a huge reaction because he wanted the audience to go big, and they did.
Chick Hazard was an improvised detective story. Phil Hartman, of course, was Chick Hazard. And we would get suggestions from the audience as to who was murdered, place of murder, and we would have our set characters, but the entire detective story would be improvised. And that was just so much fun. Jon Paragon and Doug Cox, Shirley Prestia, fabulous talent. John Mayer, Steve White, who did a kind of, I can't think of the old actor. He was wonderful. And of course, Phil, who was fantastic to be on stage with. We did I knew that the story was kind of around that he really liked very feminine things, feminine women and lingerie. So my character was Carmen Pluto, atomic blonde bombshell, or blonde atomic bomb, or atomic bomb, anyway. And so I would wear kind of a 40s dress. So I thought to change things up a little bit, I'm going to do a whole negligee outfit. And I'm going to surprise him. Do something, to keep it going, keep it fresh. So I made this negligee with a black lace, it was nude fabric underneath, and very, very sexy. And I thought he would go on stage and say the next person I had to interview, she was Carmen Pluto, atomic blonde bombshell. I went down the manicured drive, blah, 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 blah. So he would be upstage. I would be downstage. So I got a chair and I put a leg up on a chair and in this really sexy outfit. Then he would turn around and see me for the first time, and I thought, I could so surprise him. And he turned around, saw me, looked back at the audience, and he said, one look, and my cock shot down my pants leg like a snake through a vacuum cleaner hose. That was Phil. You couldn't catch him off guard. He was wonderful.
Well, Alex Sandoval, of course, was I liked him because he was totally evil. And he's based on Sidney Greenstreet, if you ever saw Sidney Greenstreet in a movie. So that kind of a guy.
So he would do the monologue, and then I would be the first one up, mostly. They had other guys who would do it occasionally, but I was the one who discovered the crime scene and called Phil to it. So Phil came out, and he had 3 jokes or so, 3 or 4 or whatever, that we did every night, that he would come out and I would set him up, or he would set himself up, and I would trigger it, and he'd say the punchline. If he got a big laugh on his monologue, he'd feel comfortable that he could do what he wanted. And when those 3 jokes worked, suddenly it was your scene. And the supporting characters, he would support us, kind of like Johnny Carson used to do with his comedians. They'd get up and be funny, and he'd be funny, and then, boom, he'd throw them the cues. Well, he'd throw us our cues, and if we really got a good laugh, he would do a what? like that, and it was really the best experience I had at the Groundlings. And I got to know
the Olympic Arts Festival, that was, from then on, the Groundlings started getting full houses all the time. It was kind of a turning point for the Groundlings. And it was very, very exciting to have a show in the festival and have people from all over the world come to see it and get to work with Phil Hartman and Jon Lovitz was in the cast, and Tress MacNeille and Shirley Prestia. So it was working with all your friends. And
my favorite character was that talk show. That was that was just the one I was so confident in that I could just say anything, and I had a very good chance of getting a laugh. And for me to do that one, it was just the attitude. Just the attitude. So somebody was saying, well, how'd you come up with that character? I said, when I was a kid growing up, I was watching TV, I was watching the local news. And I think every news station has that person who is just like, bigger than life, It's like, and that's how, and I just kept building on it. And Shirley was just great because she would just sit there with that grin on her face.
But I always thought, pound for pound, the funniest groundling was Jon Paragon. He just killed people. I mean, everything he did, and he's the only guy ever to get Hartman to crack up on stage. So.
Another one was like doing this improv with Phil called Chick Hazard, and I played this character named Nick Camaro. Phil was like naming all of everybody after the names of a car, Billy Pontiac and Joey Gremlin, and so. My thing in that was just like to try to crack Phil up, because like Phil was like so good and so focused and just amazing when he was in this Chick Hazard character. I mean, he was so into his zone, and he totally knew the genre and the dialogue speak, and then to try to make him laugh while he was in that kind of very serious, Robert Stack mode. So I would do stuff like I was wearing a tuxedo and I like patted my ass in this tuxedo and then put like a cocktail glass on it with like a martini glass that had, water in it. And as soon as he came on stage one time, I turned around and showed him my ass and said, "Cocktail chick." And it just completely like made him fall out. And he does these, turn away from the camera to stop from laughing. And then he, put his stoic face right back on.
Can I tell you about Lynn Stewart and I went on an industrial to Bermuda, and I didn't have any money back then, and she bought me a bathing suit. She was so nice. We had such a great time. That's another great memory. And Robin Schiff won a car on a game show, and she let me have it for a really tiny down payment and like pennies on the dollar and really small payments monthly, and she finally even forgave me that. And Robin Schiff also gave me my first computer. I mean, she just literally gave it to me. There's been a lot of generosity in the groundlings throughout the years.
That's part of your job, is to create characters. And I guess my go-to character that I had the most success with there was Guy DeSimone, the Frank Sinatra impersonator. And I thought of him because I had seen a guy in somewhere like Glendale or something, and he was a Frank Sinatra impersonator. He was terrible, as was I as Guy DeSimone, but that was the character, and over the years I always sort of did like I sort of made my mark, if I've made a mark, of playing third-rate characters who dream of being second-rate. That's sort of my sweet spot, and Guy DeSimone was really the prime example.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies. Close your eyes. You'll think it's Sinatra. It's a motto I've been living by all my life. DeSimone does Sinatra. DeSimone does Sinatra. Sinatra, DeSimone, DeSimone, Sinatra. The words themselves conjure up all kinds of emotions. Hiya, buddy, what's your name?
Jerry.
Jerry, where you from, Jerry?
Yep.
Well, think about it. Get back to me. That's a Guy DeSimone joke, and don't you forget it. Hiya, honey, what's your name?
Sharon.
Sharon, where you from, Sharon?
Here.
Here, right here at that seat, born and raised, right here. The top of Duarte. What a life you've had, Sharon. That's a Guy DeSimone quip, and don't you forget it. Hiya, honey, what's your name?
It started in the show, and I would improvise a song, a Sinatra-type song, and that was successful. And then Bill Steinkellner, who had worked on the Pee Wee Show, which was a huge deal, said, "Do you want to do a Guy DeSimone play?" And I was like, "Oh my God, that sounds really fun." And we did On the Road with Guy DeSimone, which was, Pee Wee was the first spin-off play. And then I think Waco was second, which was Randy Bennett and Phil Hartman, Cassandra, Nancy, can't remember her last name, did the Waco play, which was really funny. And then On the Road with Guy DeSimone, which was a show about Guy and his two backup singers touring around really bad towns in Southern California, you know, like Tustin and towns you'd never, Bell, the city of Bell, you know, towns you'd never go to. But his home was in the city of Duarte. And that came from talking to the actual Frank Sinatra impersonator, because I went back to see him and somehow I bought him a drink. I said, "Hey, can I buy you a drink?" And the guy went, "Yeah." I bought him a drink and I'm talking to him and he's telling me all this stuff. And he said his favorite place to play, anywhere. He said, anywhere in the country. It's like he gets booked and he's other in the country. My greatest place in the country is Duarte, California, which and then I went out to Duarte. I was driving. I'm fascinated by this guy, and we're out there and drive out to Duarte, and it's the most mundane town. The City of Hope is there, you know, the hospital, but other than that, there's nothing there. There's a tire store maybe and a coffee shop, but there's nothing there, and yet to this guy, it was heaven. And so I loved that. I loved the fact that he thought Duarte, California was heaven.
I always did old ladies. I would do old lady, older lady, or oldest lady. I did a lot of sort of a variation of Billy Burke, you know, are you a good witch or a bad witch, that kind of person. Or this one, it's 2 o'clock, time for candy. Or the Sunday school teacher. So I probably tended to play old. Oh, but I also like playing the blousy, boozy woman, which I played quite a bit. I loved entering the stage and not looking like myself at all, and I wanted the audience to gasp and say, "Oh my God, she looks terrible." And that kind of character would be the, what rating does this show have? Can I swear? Well, that one character that I did, she would enter, she'd go, "I just fucked me a Peterbilt with a tattoo on his ass." That kind of, which is a Melanie line, by the way. Or same kind of character would write a letter, "Dear Matthew Broderick, you never been, I can't even remember the lines. Dear Matthew Broderick, you have a good face, a nice, clean face. You've never been desperate, have you?" You know, and then drinking and smoking. So I probably just played myself.
Okay. Just like that. 2. You did like a talk show?
Well, I did Phil Donahue with Lynn Stewart. That was the easiest sketch I ever did because it was an opening for Lynn Stewart to be as filthy as she possibly could be inside a really nice character of Dr. Ruth. I just knew it was going to be easy. The thing about Phil Donahue was that it kind of got me the show Nightstand with Dick Dietrich that ran on E! And in syndication, because the guys who I created that show with had seen me do Donahue. They were big Guy DeSimone fans, but when they saw me do Donahue, it clicked on them. What do we say we make fun of daytime talk? And I never thought that show would sell, but it did. We did 96 episodes. It was all great. But that came out of the Donahue piece, which I loved. It was just, me doing Phil Donahue. It was stupid. I would always put the hand over the head and always ask questions. And I did a character named Desmond Germain who was based on a public access, back when they had public access, a cooking show. And I called this show Cuisine de Pasadena, and with your host Desmond Germain, who I based on my mother, because my mother had a talk show back outside of Philadelphia in a suburban town, and the Joan Stack Show, and it was done at a restaurant. And I was once on the show, but she had some big celebrities, and she would also then have like the fire chief at the local fire company talk about the pancake breakfast coming up. But my mother was she was a real character and great. But she used to, when she did the radio show, she would talk and say every word in a very distinct manner. and she would put inflections in words that shouldn't be there. And she would add syllables to certain words. For example, the largest city in the state of Georgia is Atlanta. And so I turned that impression of my mother into Desmond Germain. I had a ton of fun doing Desmond Germain.
I've gotten a tremendous amount of work from the Groundlings, from friends and the Groundlings. And I've also done shows like Significant Other, and I'm in a show right now. I have a recurring part on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And both of those shows were half improvised. And so the Groundling training was invaluable because I'm very comfortable improvising. So, I mean, if they need a middle-aged woman who can improvise, I know that I have a really good chance to play a mother who can improvise.
Okay. For them. And I don't think that I'm candy coating history, but it just seemed to be real familial and generous.
The Groundlings was very much getting a character and then figuring out what's the best way to showcase that character. You know, and it could be a monologue, it could be a scene, it could be a song. You know, that was really the way it worked, and which was, you know, very actor-driven. You know, that was as opposed to a top-down, it was more of a bottom-up type of situation. And what I always saw the job as is, okay, how can, you know, what's the best use of that character? How can we program that or stage that or combine that? Would that work best as a scene? Would that work best as a piece of one? A lot of people had very clear ideas of that. They would come in with material that was, okay, I know I want to do this, I want to do it as a two-person scene, and here we go. And the work would really be done for you. I mean, it might suggest some trims, some changes, but if the work was great, I mean, that's less work with the director. If I can just pop that in, it's great. Sometimes, otherwise, you had things that looked like they were great ideas, but we didn't really quite figure out how it would be staged best, or what it would be like, or what if we put this on a panel, or what if we did this as a sliding one. So finding that kind of thing was a lot of what I tried to help out. I mean, who knows, I got away as much as I didn't, but I thought that was part of, you know, the obligation. Creating improv structures was another thing that I worked on a lot, is coming up with, you know, say the Chick Alger piece again, kind of, he did this great character, Phil did this great character, and sort of the job was that, okay, what's the best way to maximize this character? And so what we all worked on was finally coming up with this improv structure that would allow him to do some great written material, but also do some great improvising, and kind of go back and forth and use a lot of different characters. So those kinds of things, you know, were, I think, part of what the directing job was and what I did. The only thing I would say about the show that struck me as very different from the shows that we did, the show I saw a couple years ago was the absence of what we used to call, in my day, the downraft, which was essentially a piece usually done with one person or two people over on the side of the stage in a spot which would allow the main set to be moved around as much as possible, so that there was never a stoppage of the show. You'd go from center stage to downraft to center stage to downraft to center stage. You know, it was always going. In the show I saw, there wasn't any of that. It was all center stage stuff, just a choice, you know, but those downraft pieces were always terrific exposures for actors, because it was just you doing your character, and I thought some of the best pieces were those pieces in one. it's also a nice alpha contrast to show like a four-person scene, a one-person scene. You know, back and forth, lights up, lights out. It created more variety, and also didn't mean there was any dead time. You went, you know, main piece, black out, music, interlude, lights up. Let them, the actor get the first laugh, and the stage managers come on, change around, black out, musical, lights up. So that you never had a stoppage of the show. And that was, and also, you could use more people. You could get more material in the, whatever time you said your act was, you could get more pieces in there because you weren't having any time where there really wasn't performance going on.
I could do some improv, and I always did every show I ever did in the Groundlings, and I only had some improv thing. You know, Sam Harris, Anthony Newley, George McGrath, Mr. Johnson's Ballet. They were some of my most popular things, and I don't want to toot my own horn. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I was good at it. I could take very complicated series of suggestions and turn them into improvised songs. So at first it was, you know, give me a sentence, and then it was like, give me your couple's name and this other couple's name, and where did you grow up, and what do you do for a living, and I would have, you know, 15 suggestions that I wanted into a song. And then some things I did and done were musical, but it wasn't improv. I loved performing music in the Groundlings. I loved performing it as characters. I loved doing some improv. Rico Gord was fantastic at just doing everything. You know, if you say you want to do something, you need to whip it up in a second.
The New York school was really the brainstorm of Randy Bennett, who was a company member and teacher here for, you know, a number of years. And so we decided to try to do that with the board of directors and the company. There was some opposition to that, certainly, but it was decided to give it a try, and they started classes there and formed a performing company, and I went back and forth a lot. It was Randy and Shirley Prestia went to start that. And we had space there, and the shows were on. They did the Carolines, which was a comedy club in New York at the time, and pretty successful. Did a lot of nice things. Then Randy, for personal reasons, had to leave, and he was replaced by Hillary Stern, who was a lady in the company who moved there with her family, and then I think there was just some inherent tension between the people in LA and the people there, and I can't remember, frankly, what the real particulars of it were. It was, I think, some financial issues, and people felt it wasn't making as much money as it should make, or it wasn't getting the reviews. Again, I would have to go back and really look at that to remember the particulars, but there was clearly a time where it became clear that we needed to supplement that. That was the general will, I think, of both the board of directors and the membership was that should be separate, and so it was separated.
They did try and expand in New York, and that was doomed from the start. I wasn't on the board at that time, and I know we had a company meeting about it, and I said, this is not going to work. It's going to be too expensive. And, well, we were told, they've run the numbers, you know, and they've, you know, blah, 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 blah. And, of course, it became a big money pit.
In, I think it was like 87 or so, Randy Bennett and Shirley Prestia, I remember, I was on the board, and I remember hearing them talk about starting Groundlings East, and I was sort of involved with that because I really loved New York and I had a lot of connections, and My family was back there. And so Randy and Shirley started Groundlings East in New York City. And after about a year, they really wanted to come back to LA. And by that point, I was ready to leave Los Angeles and go back east. And I took it over, and it was wonderful. They had already formed a group of really committed, great teachers, and the school was already sort of in gear. And there was just a great group of people, and they really imported that whole idea of like developing characters in New York City. And so I was able to kind of slip right in and run that company.
Were there any major differences between the two?
Yeah, Groundlings East was not nearly as successful. It's still going though, and it's been 20 years.
I think the Groundlings East was an invention of Randy Bennett. Shirley Prestia went there. She left LA to go back and work with him there. I think that was Randy, to his credit, was trying, he wanted to live in New York and thought, here's a great opportunity to start a company in New York with classes. And I think it worked for a little while. I think, again, that gets into democracy versus autocracy, where I think Randy thought, I don't know this, and Randy's one of my best friends. I love the guy. I think he needed to be an autocrat in order to make that run back there, yet he was answering to a board and a company back in LA, and I don't think they saw eye to eye. And I think it got to the point where Randy just said, okay, I'm done.
I was on the board of directors. Like, they had 3 performers who were on the board, and the company was in a lot of financial trouble. And, I can't remember all the details of it, but I ended up taking over because I had an accounting background. And I took over running the company, like, financially for, I think it was 6 months. In some ways, when I look back on it, I can't believe I did it. I mean, now I would never do that. But I felt like it was unusual that I had accounting skills, and I was a comedian and in the show, and I loved the theater so much. Like, I kind of knew how to handle it, and I realized no one else that was my equal there really did. I really did have special combination of skills in accounting and comedy. So I could mostly understand what the needs were, but I also understood what had to be done, and it was terrible. I mean, we were in terrible financial straits, and the first thing I think we had to do was give everyone a 10% pay cut, which was not a small thing. For many people, that was really meant having to take up other work, or it was horrible to have to do that. So I had to be really unpopular, and it was not fun. I remember thinking we could start renting the theater. I really hustled on getting people to rent the theater for other things. And I was part of a committee to find a new person to run the theater, which we did find Orrin Michaels, and then I worked with him for another year to try to get him up to speed. And it was scary, and it was hard. I mean, people got upset with me, and I didn't like being in management. I wanted to be just a comedian. I didn't want to run a theater like that and understand all the accounting and the insurance and the mortgage payment and understand all the things that went into it. But for whatever reason, at that time, I did it. And I think I did get us through a scary time. I wasn't really responsible for the great success it had later, but I feel like I was one of the many people who got us through a particularly frightening moment when it could have all gone away. 6 Groundlings! Oh my God.
You did 3 main shows.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember some of your characters in those shows?
Yes. I remember I played a model who was was only like 14 but looked like she was 28, which of course I was that age, or a little older even. But the whole idea is that she looked really old, but when she talked like she was 14. I did Mea Culpa, which I did the play based on that character who was mousy and put upon and apologizing for everything and apologizing for running into furniture. And then eventually I did Pat, that character, the androgynous character that I ended up doing at SNL.
What is it?
What is what?
Your last name.
Riley.
Pat Riley.
Yes. But there's one big difference between me and him.
Really, what?
I don't coach a professional basketball team. That's my little joke.
And then before that, I did another character called Mr. Excitement, where I was, I used to do gymnastics when I was in high school. So, all that stuff was real easy for me to do. And it looked like dancing to everybody else, but basically I'm just back handsprings and, spins and flips and stuff like that. And here, I'll show you. Just because you never lose it once you have it. Once you've ruined these muscles in your Starbucks commercial, once you've ruined these muscles, they stay stretched forever. Once you rip them, they're ripped for good. So it's a trick that I can still do with very little injury to myself. Doing back handsprings, though, that's another story. It's like, without getting back into training and doing it on mats, and I'll also look at the size of the stage going, I can't believe I would do a round off and 2 back handsprings in this tiny little confined space. But I was 21.
For me, one of the ways I knew that I don't want to say meant to perform because I don't really believe in that, but that I was suited to it physically was that there was something that made me less nervous right before I went on stage. It's almost like my blood pressure went down. Like I was excited, but there was this kind of calm that took over me. Like, I don't know. It was a weird thing. And I didn't know that till I was at the Groundlings, that I even had that in me. But I did. And I found other people have that too. Not everyone. Or maybe they describe it differently. But I have this kind of nervousness, excitement, and then I would say the 30 seconds before I actually go on stage, I just get calm and focused.
Towards the end of my Groundling reign, I decided I'd never done a solo song piece. I'm not really a singer, but I thought, well, who cares if I'm not really a singer? The guy will be a bad singer. So I decided, what should I do? So I had a friend who was listening to a lot of country music, so I started listening to country music and I'll bet I could do something with country music, because I had grown up, my dad liked country music when I was growing up, so I'd heard a lot of it growing up. And so I said, well, I'll be a country singer. And so, because they wore those gaudy outfits in the old days, and so I made this outfit that was all spangled and, had it was baby blue with I think I had blue sparkles running down the outside of the legs. And then I had this baby blue shirt that I had drawn pictures of like circus scenes, like a snake handler, and I think I had some other stuff on it too. And then I'd bedazzled it with all these, you know, rhinestones I'd bought at the hobby store. And his name was Dwayne Acuff. I went to Alan, I told him I wanted to do this, and I had like a formula in my head for what I wanted to do. And so he came up with the music for the song, and I came out. I can't remember how they introduced me. I can't remember, but I came out and I had a hat and the whole outfit, and it just looked really ridiculous, but, you know, shiny and stuff. And I'd, you know, tip my hat. Thank you very much. And so, and I did like these really silly jokes. The band was the Arkansas Bad Boys. That's what I called the band. I go, Smiling Ed on the drums and the legendary Roy Axelrod on pedal steel guitar. And he would play a pedal steel thing. The Bad Boy Band, I said. And I go like, Roy and Ed are very closely related. They're each other's father. And it's like the stupidest joke, didn't make any sense, but always got a huge laugh. So I would start out, I would go out into the audience and talk to the audience, because that's something I always like to do a lot of. And I'd pick 3 girls out of the audience, you know, one at a time. And I go like, let's see. I said, something about being out on the road. I'm out on the road again because I need the money, and because I just got a divorce and I need the money. And then I go like, when I come out on the road, I like to meet a lot of pretty girls. I see a lot of pretty girls out here tonight. I think I'll go out and talk to them. So I'd go out there and talk to them. I had a little song for each one. I would like get their name, and then there was and I can't remember the music. There would be, I would do like a, you know, 2 lines with a rhyme. You know, about the name, then what the second one would be like, where are you from? And then I would do a different song, but I would sing a little thing, make it up and sing a little thing. And then I would do like, what do you do for a living? And then I would do the same thing. And then I'd go back on the stage and I go like, you know, they tell me I've written over 5,000 country tunes in my long career, but after 20 years of Percodan and Jack Daniels, I can't remember a goddamn one of them. So then that would be the premise to make up to improvise a song, and I would go from there. And my favorite part of the song was I had this really shitty guitar that I had bought for like $10 or $5 at a yard sale. And I spangled it all up, you know, with glitter, and I painted stuff on it like a bucking bronco and a cactus and a Hawaiian lady dancing under a palm tree. And it was just really silly looking. And what I'd do is I'd come out wearing it, you know, with a strap and everything, and then I'd take it off and I'd put it on a stand, and it had its own light. So it's like, you know, this guy's going to be good, you know. So then I'd start singing the song, and then halfway through the song, I'd go, move over, Roy, make room for Daddy. And I'd go over and put the guitar on. You could just go 1 string, bow, 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 with a big shitty grin on my face. Bow, 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 bow. And again, the audience was, the first time we rehearsed that, somebody, it might have been Alan, goes, are you going to do that in the show? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, it's terrible. I go, yeah, it's terrible. He goes, well, the audience isn't going to like that. I said, you watch what the audience does when I do this.
Almost everything I ever did in my career could be traced somehow back to the Groundlings. Parts I got in TV shows, of course, casting directors came to the Groundlings, saw me in the Groundlings, or I got really good reviews, like in the Hollywood Reporter and Variety when I first came out. So that got me jobs. Pee-wee's Playhouse, running Pee-wee's Playhouse, would never have happened if I hadn't been in the Groundlings. You know, Paul was gone long before I got there, but when he got the deal to do the kids show, Tracy Newman brought him to the theater to see you know, any actors you like, any writers you like, and he came backstage and said, who wrote this, and who wrote this, and who wrote this, and I had. And the next week he called me up and said, would you like to write a TV show with me? And I said, yeah. And that completely turned my life around. I mean, what it did on the one hand was change my career from a performer to a writer, because at the time Pee-wee's Playhouse was such a big deal, and the second season it was just Paul and I, so agents would say, I want to get one of those hip, happening writers from Pee-wee's Playhouse, and I was the only one to get. So Paul was going to do anything else, and so that started plus the Emmy nominations from that. It was all of a sudden I was a hip, happening writer of some sort.
More wigs and costumes, kids. Forget that sitcom shit. Wigs and costumes. Characters. The pretty people will come and go, but the character people will always work.
Hey, thanks for watching so much, and as they say at the Groundlings, blackout.
Those Bruins.
Oh, it is such a wonderful way. Sonia, see, the trick is to yell it after everyone yells it.
So I'm going to teach you all how to laugh at the show, all right? Now, when something is unusual, let's try that one. Funny, we go, ha! Okay, let's try it. Ooh, that was funny. Good. Now, when something is really funny, you go, okay. Oh, that was too funny. Perfect. So, you guys all come in one car? You mean, you don't all know one another? Oh, well then, let's go around the room and introduce one another then. Starting with this gentleman right here.